I just remember not feeling like I was good. Like everything I did was wrong. Like I got on everybody's nerves. Like I said, I could have never told you that that's what I was feeling, but I think I just kind of like imploded in on myself around 7, 8 years old when all this came out.
Let's be honest about recovery.
The rewards, the challenges.
Let's talk about our failures.
We are flawed people, after all.
Let's challenge the stigmas that weigh us down.
Because while most of us are looked at,
few of us are seen.
Let's talk about addiction.
And how Christ overcomes our weaknesses.
Because we are loved.
because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
We are loved.
We are
Because
loved.
we are loved.
Hi, my name is Angela, and this is my story. My name means messenger of God, but I never felt like a message. I felt like a mistake. I was abandoned, but now I'm adopted. I was a runner, but now I'm rooted. I was silenced, but now I have a voice. The life that I have that was full of shame and brokenheartedness is now the story that I use to help bind up the brokenhearted.
Hey there, and welcome back to Jesus Loves Addicts. I'm Catherine, this is Paul, and today we have a guest my heart is super happy about. Today we're going to talk with Angela Lignos Yeager, and Angela is a woman I've had the privilege of knowing throughout this recovery journey, Christian walk, for basically the last 8 years, and I have just watched her truly become the woman God called her to be. But I know that she had to go through some things to get there, and today she's going to tell us more about what that looked like for her. Thank you for being here. It took us long enough to get you here.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that.
Played hard to get.
I did. She was like, later.
Well, good things deserve a wait.
Yes.
So, but Angela, you said a couple of things in your introduction that we're privy to hearing you do. And I didn't know that Angela meant messenger of God, for one. And what an interesting place to begin right there, right? That's your given name. But some real insight that I think takes us to the beginning of your story. And I love the way you put this. In fact, I'll probably butcher it, so maybe you can say it again. Okay. But you said from abandonment to adoption, right?
Yes.
You were abandoned. And what you mean, and I love that because it shows both sides of the equation. I'm assuming you're referring to the abandonment in this world, on this side of heaven, to adoption into Christ's family, right?
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm sure that speaks to where things start for you, right?
Yeah. My father was not in my life for very long. There were times that he was there, but it was not good. So there was some mental illness on his part, some drug addiction. But he was gone at the age of 2, kind of reintroduced here and there. I remember my grandmother, he's Greek. My grandmother was Greek, so I loved her. She was my yaya, and he lived with her. So I was going over there to see them a lot. And then that was abruptly stopped, probably about the age of 7 or 8.
Stopped in the sense that you could no longer go over there?
I could no longer go over there. Yeah. So some sexual abuse and, and that's really all I remember. And so when that came out, that was stopped. But it was damaging in the fact that, then I didn't have a father, at all. And I really craved that, my whole life. So...
Well, already such an interesting dynamic, right? The way you put that. I mean, on one hand, there's sexual abuse, a horrible violation, and yet innately, a child wants their dad.
Wants their father.
God, what a,
Yeah. So that's a very hard thing to reconcile inside of yourself as a child as well,
Yeah.
And I don't know how a child would even begin. And I think that parents or guardians or whichever the case may be, I think that they have the best intentions, but they have conversations that they feel are age appropriate, and you may not have a lot of things answered. And so now you've got these questions.
Yes. So a lot of shame was there,
Were you aware to know that it was shame that you were feeling at that young age?
Absolutely not. I have the verbiage, all the words to go back and recount what I was going through now, but in that time in my life, absolutely not. Just a lot of confusion. Over what was going on, and But I knew that it was wrong.
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah.
that it was done in secret. So I knew that there was something there about it.
I'm sorry, did you know it was wrong? Because even as a young child, typically the parent makes it, if that happens, there's some effort on their part to make it okay, even if it is being done in secret. They can, don't they typically try to send the message that this is what love looks like or something? I don't know that that's true of you, but is that?
Yeah, I mean, so I knew it was wrong because I was told that it was wrong, and and this is so crazy. I was forced to tell that it had happened.
You weren't going to.
I was not. I loved my grandmother, my yaya, and my dad's place. I loved to be over there. I felt like the apple of their eye. I got a lot of attention there that, I wasn't really getting at my mother's house. She was young. She was 27, had 3 kids. She was still in that time era where you didn't want to be alone raising children. So she was trying to find a husband for herself, a father for her kids. And, that introduced a lot of other trauma into our lives as children, with
Different
stepfathers and different dynamics coming into the home. So.
Were there abusive stepfathers?
So my stepfather, my sister's father, was very militant. And I just remember at that age, memories for me are very, they're blocked, they're sporadic. I might get images here and there. Sure. So I just remember not feeling like I was good. Like everything I did was wrong. Like I got on everybody's nerves. Like I said, I could have never told you that that's what I was feeling, but I think I just kind of like imploded in on myself around 7, 8 years old when all this came out.
Yeah.
And things were going on, and behaviors that then I was displaying in different younger relationships that I was in, were mimicking my father and I's,
Relationship, and you didn't
relationship. I didn't know. So I didn't know what was going on. And so it began this spiral of like a very silent, isolated, secretive life that was going on with me. I don't know if that's what you'd call it, a life, but it's this like thing that was happening inside my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's, no one's going to understand me. I'm not going to fit.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to say anything. And that's like, if I've talked to women, I've been through things where what is the voice that you believe that you heard? And it's that no one's going to understand. You're not going to fit. So you better not even try.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't know that anybody else is going through the same things around you.
Talking.
Nobody talks about it. Yeah.
And that isolates you. Those thought process isolate you. But maybe even more toxic to the who I am kind of thing is what you just said, is that, and this speaks, I said, did you know it was shame back then? You said, absolutely not. And I appreciate that, right? Because we don't, a small child doesn't know that verb. It's just, but what it translates into is what you just said. All I knew is I felt bad. That confusion translates into something's not right here, and it must be me.
It must be me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So
and then I have these behaviors that are creating reactions from the people in my life toward me that are affirming that something's wrong with Angela. So it just kind of grew from there. And no intervention on it. There was no intervention. So
then a lot of things weren't talked about. It's only, we've got a needed focus on mental health and trauma and things like that. We didn't hear the words trauma-informed care and how important that was. We just didn't.
Well, in a home that has that level of dysfunction, the shame tends to be systemic, and nobody really knows what to do. Everybody's hiding behind their own tree. So it's almost impossible to address until somebody steps outside of that.
And I still don't know what my mom's really went through, what really drove her, to some of the decisions and choices that she made in her life, So I still think that there's still that level of isolation in her own life, which helps me to forgive and to love her,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't know what it is, but you can definitely tell that you speak about this now from a place of healing. Not that it's ever pleasant, but you're able to do it really well. And so thank you. I always feel like that's such an area that needs exploration because it's unfortunately and very sadly so common. And so for people to be able to see somebody like yourself speak from it from a place of, hey, this, I don't cherish that moment in my life, but it's something that I've worked through and
I've healed from it. And if I can, someone else can.
And, now I sit and I listen to women tell me the similar stories that they've never told anyone before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they found somebody finally in life that they can discuss it with. And, I'm able to, have that compassion for them and non-judgment, and hopefully somewhat normalize it. And that's sad that
no, but it has to be
normalized.
Yes, normalize the conversation and that, hey, there's no shame in talking about this and that transparency of, I'm not going to ask you to walk through something that I haven't.
Absolutely.
But you're not going to walk through it by yourself.
I got you.
Yeah, I am right here.
Yeah. So, all right. So, wow. Tumultuous start to the story.
Yeah.
Where does that take us?
I'm plugging along, going to school. And, one of I think the biggest things, I did become a runner. I said a girl who ran to someone who is now rooted. That started as a young child. It started with us moving a lot. I went to, I think, 3 or 4 elementary schools, an intermediate school, 2 middle schools, and 3 high schools. So you've got a girl here who is already isolating herself from the world, who is, really not developing many social skills in the sense that I'm able to really get intimate, transparent with anyone. I'm able to put on a front for a little while.
Well, you've been doing that
I will be
for a
gone
long
soon.
time.
Yeah. Nothing lasts. So I'm there, and I get into high school, and I start drinking, smoking weed. Just the normal stuff. I hear this timeline a lot. You drink, you smoke weed. Here comes the coke and the ecstasy.
Yes.
If you don't get away from it, then it turns into the heroin and the meth and the harder stuff, the needle usage.
It is progressive.
It's very progressive, and it was quickly progressive with me, and quick and hard. And I always said, I don't do anything. I don't do it a little bit. I'm going to jump in head first, and that was true with my drug addiction as well. So. I graduated high school. I mean, I did do that.
Yeah.
I never
by the skin of your teeth, or did you
No,
excel?
I never made really good grades.
Okay.
No. I failed PE. I can remember getting asked, "How do you fail PE?"
You got to try doing that.
Well, you got to go in there and dress out in front of everyone.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to do these things that normal people seem to have no problem doing.
Because you felt, I feel like that's actually a more common thing than we realize.
Yeah.
If we battle shame, and then now you're telling me I have to go to this class, I have to dress out into clothes that are not hiding me.
Yeah.
And I might have to show that I'm not graceful. I'm not athletic. I'm not these things now.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'll take the F.
I'll take
and
the
that
F.
way it's my choice.
Yep.
I'll show
That's
you.
right. Yeah.
Gosh, that's interesting. Yeah.
But in other schools academically, I wasn't excelling either. I know now that I just didn't have it in me to pay attention in school.
Yeah.
I do believe that I struggled with, looking back now, like severe social anxiety disorder, ADHD, OCD, real obsessive compulsive thinking. Which is I'm just now getting freedom from that at like the age of 50, to where I don't have those.
50 last week.
Yeah.
Hey, happy birthday.
Thank
What
you.
was the focal point of those obsessions? Like, do you
Oh,
recall?
my body, my movements, the way that I spoke, just every single
very
thing. I
self-conscious.
nitpicked myself, and just everything about me. So.
Was there a corresponding eating disorder, or just?
No, actually never. But I was very, very thin. I got made fun of for being too skinny. So they're gonna find a way to pick on somebody. They're gonna figure out something to pick on you about. But
when you
so
said
I was bullied.
the way, because I know that a lot of times the obsessive thoughts can also lead us to repetitious efforts and trying.
Yes.
things, patterns,
Absolutely.
routines. Whenever you're talking about the thoughts about your movement, am I moving right? What do I look like when I'm walking across a room to sharpen a pencil? Because that can be mortifying if you don't want to be seen.
You don't want to be seen.
Did you ever try to change that or rehearse something different or stay focused? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I think when I was alone, I did, but nothing ever worked, you know, because I still don't believe that I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't believe anybody's going to accept me, you know.
I have to change everything.
Yeah.
So did the drugs and the alcohol medicate that for you? Did when you were
did a bit.
It kind of alleviated that pressure that
it did a bit.
So
and of course, you know, I'm changing, you know, my personality changes, the way I dress changes, the color of my hair changes. It's just anything I can do to mold myself or, you know, be a chameleon, if you will. I used to think that was a superpower of mine, and now I realize that it was a completely toxic survival mechanism.
Yeah.
That I used my whole life, you know, so.
One more clarifying question on kind of mom's role, because we kind of slipped past that. You talked about her being young and kind of in the market for a husband herself.
Yeah.
Did she sort of take on the role as more of kind of another friend and less of a mother figure, just kind of a...
Yeah. Now, she raised us. You know, we went to church for a little while. She raised us well. She did well. You know, I can remember some really great times, but there was no man. It was just me, her, and my brother and my sister. And I can remember us having some really good times together. When the men came in, and then the alcohol and the drugs. You know, my dad was abused drugs, which led psychedelic drugs, which led to mental illness in him. Then my stepfather was a drug dealer. You know,
so was your mom using? Did she have her own struggles?
I do believe so.
Okay.
I never saw it.
Yeah.
So, but yes, looking back now, absolutely.
Okay.
There's no way she wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, we had the task force bust in come in the windows and the doors when I was like 6 years old in Louisiana. Next thing you know, we're relocated in Fairhope, and that's how I got to. I was born in Grand Bay, you know, but we moved to Louisiana with my stepdad, and then we moved back to Fairhope because he was basically told not to come back. So I don't know everything that's behind that story. I know there's his side, there's her side, and then there's probably the truth.
Yeah.
But I do know that there was some racketeering, like he paid the judge off and was told never to come back to Louisiana, and
Okay.
So we were kind of scot-free, but we lived in a 3-story Victorian house in Louisiana, and we lived in a trailer on the river in Fairhope. So we lost a lot.
Everything.
In that, you know, and he's very militant.
What a recipe, though, right? You've got abuse, you've got instability, and then you have, you know, a night and day difference in your living situation. I mean, just complete.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So by the time you graduate high school, you said this progressed very quickly for you. What are you at this point using?
It did. Just a lot of, you know, it depended on who I was dating, what friends I was hanging out with, you know, what town I lived in, just depended on what drug I was indulging in at that time. And so, you know, it was probably a lot of ecstasy and cocaine and a lot of partying, drinking, working in the bars and in restaurants.
But you were already at the point that whatever was in, I would try.
Oh, yeah.
By the time you left high. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was like the guinea pig, you know. Yeah, line it up, I'll do it. You know, it didn't matter, you know, and I had very little concern with my own safety, I think, too. I don't think I would have said that back then, but I do believe that.
I think looking back, you can say it wasn't a fear for safety because of, you know, what you do and what you've learned. But I think it's also people perish for a lack of knowledge.
Absolutely.
There wasn't a lot of...
No.
If I'm not aware of what those consequences could be, then I don't have a fear of the consequences.
And I can tell you that when they came in 5th grade and said that when the Say No to Drugs campaign came, and we were being told that people were doing heroin and cocaine because it took away all their problems. I remember being 5 years old and saying, I'm going to do those drugs one day.
Because it's going to fix
I
all
remember
this.
having that thought because guess what? It's going to make all this feel better.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, that's all they told us. They didn't really I don't know if they were maybe sharing the shock value or saving the shock value for later, maybe the older kids or something.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing that in 5th grade.
What an
and being
unfortunate
I know.
delivery.
I was like,
because,
ooh.
obviously.
fix it.
Here's
Yeah.
these people telling me that this will fix that. So very crazy.
Perception, right? But all the child hears is it's going to fix that. It's really
Yes.
the perception
It
that
makes
it fixes.
you
It's
feel better.
the perception and the deception.
Yeah, absolutely.
It actually deepens all of that.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So when you get out of high school, then do you quickly enter a lifestyle that supports this chaos, or are you trying to?
I think I'm trying to be normal.
Okay.
I'm very
Whatever that
much
is.
so trying to put on a facade and seem very normal. I've had some really wonderful people in my life. Oh man, I can look back and see that the Lord has brought people that were there to try to help me to see who I truly was, but it just never worked, because the more that they loved me, the more uncomfortable I got, and so I just sabotaged everything, and it was always their fault, it was always their fault. It was, and so I could keep moving and shifting and going and running and, never have to really face myself, Like I tell people I would quickly, in one day, I'd quit a job, break up with a guy and move states. But guess who was still there?
Yeah.
Always me was still there, but I didn't realize all this was going on. I'm just kind of going. I'm just going, Yeah.
Well, I just
Running.
think of
Running,
that
yeah.
when you said that. The more they tried to love me, the more uncomfortable because you didn't know what to do with it.
Yep. Did not know what to do with it.
Well, there was no receiver, right? So I love, there's a passage in the Bible where they're trying to trap Jesus and they say, what's the first and great commandment? He gives it to him and he could have stopped right there. He could have just said, hey, it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind.
Yeah.
But then he goes one step further, as he always does, and turns the tables because he knew this would make them uncomfortable. And he said, and the second is like it, to love others as you love yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so the problem here was that people were trying to love you, but there was no receiver in you.
No receiver.
There was nothing for it to land on because you didn't love yourself yet. So it was just bouncing off. So
I like the way you put it.
Pretty sad, when I think about it.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize a major podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, your go-to option for decluttering and giving back. If you have a closet bursting at the seams or a garage that's seen better days, we've got the perfect solution for you.
That's right. America's Thrift Stores makes it easy to clear out the clutter and make a positive impact in your community. Whether you're cleaning out your wardrobe, downsizing your living space, or just looking to give back, America's Thrift Stores has you covered.
And here's the best part. You've got options. Schedule a hassle-free home pickup, drop off your items at one of their convenient donation sites, or swing by an America's Thrift Store to donate in person. No matter which way you choose, you're making a difference.
Absolutely. Every donation you make to America's Thrift Stores directly benefits charities in your area, such as the Home of Grace and other fantastic organizations dedicated to helping those in need.
For example, donations made to America's Thrift Stores in southern Mississippi help the Home of Grace provide support and assistance to individuals facing drug and alcohol addiction. Your contributions make a real impact on their mission to provide freedom from addiction through Christ-centered recovery. So not only are you decluttering your life, but you're also helping build a stronger and more supportive community.
It's truly a double blessing. So what are you waiting for? Clean out that closet, clear out that garage, and make a positive difference in your community by donating to America's Thrift Stores.
Visit America's Thrift Stores online to schedule a home pickup, locate a donation site near you, or get directions to one of their store locations.
America's Thrift Stores, where giving back never goes out of style.
I never heard it that way either, but that's exactly what it was. I mean, I've heard that, I've known that I didn't know how to receive love, but that's it. There was no receiver. They were throwing
right.
They were
all
trying,
day.
but
They were
you
trying.
didn't love you.
Yeah.
And it was everywhere I went. People liked me. People
Sure.
pulled me in. They saw something in me, and I I always thought like, oh, they're going to get to know the real person
And
one
not
day.
like you, not like me.
And they're
That's
not
the
gonna like me.
danger of being a chameleon.
Yeah.
Right? Is that nobody sees the pain because you're too good at disguising it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
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 Toxicity. Yeah.
So that's a hard memory.
It is. Now that I have people in my life and I'm so rooted, it just makes me wonder what all I missed,
Yeah.
And it makes me feel really bad for the things that I put people through who loved me, and tried to love me,
I'm more upset or hurt for the you that didn't know how to
Yeah,
be loved. I'm
that's-
more upset for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now I am.
Yeah.
Now I give her that compassion and that grace, and that mercy.
Amen. And that's the part of loving yourself that you've learned,
And
right?
learning.
Yeah.
Now you have a large
that's it.
receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm like, I need more. Because I always had a lot of love to give, and I just
Sure.
never, and I used
You
to
know what to do with it.
Man, yeah. And I used to be like, I used to think, I love this person so much and they just can't love me back. They were trying. I just didn't know how to receive it, So I was very emotionally damaging to people. I was the toxic one, in a lot of my relationships. And that was one of those revelations when I came to the Lord that I had, and it was good. It was hard though,
Yeah.
They're like, oh man, I was the toxic one.
I was the red flag.
I was they should have ran,
I was the one you got warned. Yes, yeah.
Yep.
It was
Well,
us.
the reality is we've all been victimized and we've all victimized others. I mean, that's
Absolutely,
just the reality,
yeah.
right? We just, we live in the fallout of brokenness, and that's what we do. We swim in it. So
Yes, it was very narcissistic things operating inside of me, and looking that back, I called my mentor, Sandy, one time and I said, am I narcissistic? And she said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I mean, I guess if I'm asking, maybe I'm not, maybe I just have tendencies, but that was just
fear.
a lot of, it was very much a fear. It was very much some things I began to question in myself, within myself.
But you know what I love about the question is that that's one of those diagnoses that we use incorrectly, but it still serves its purpose for discussion, right?
Yeah.
So there's not a clinical diagnosis, but what I love about the question is that everything leading up to this, if somebody hears you ask that question, somebody might be going, I don't see her as narcissistic at all. I see her as empty. But the reality is self-loathing is actually just the opposite side of the same coin as being cocky or self, right? It's still seeing self as too much. I can either see myself as God's gift to people, or I can see myself as the source of all evil in my life.
Yeah.
Both of them see myself as too much.
Too much.
So
Gotcha.
I love the fact that you term it that way, because there is a disguised, not clinical, but narcissism in there, right? Seeing self as too big for the picture. And so, but the sad part for you is that as opposed to the cocky person who puts all, accepts the credit for everything good in their life, you're doing the opposite. You're accepting the credit for all that's wrong in your life.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. And both of those are incorrect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So here we are. We're
Are you working or in and out of relationships?
I'm always able to work. I kept a job down. I always used to call myself a jack of all trades, because I would, obviously, if I can't stay anywhere for long, a job's not going to be any different. So, I moved around jobs. I tried to, stay. I said, I'm going to be a good employee this time, and I'm not going to do all these things that I did, all these other jobs. And of course, that didn't ever play out, because here I am. I'm still just me. Just wind you up and let it go.
And
That's what's
rooted.
happening over and over again. That, like the patterns you were talking about. It was like I was on this hamster wheel and I just couldn't get off. I was reliving the same thing over and over again, different people, places, and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bringing you to every one of them.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I would venture to say that probably a lot of your running was running from your own perception of what was. It probably wasn't even reality, right? You probably left jobs that you were certain you were about to get fired on, which may have been the furthest thing from the truth, right? Because you interpreted everything negatively. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's been part of my undoing is my perception of things. You know, I've had people look me straight in the eye and say, Angela, that did not happen that way.
Yeah.
Like they did not say that.
Yeah.
You know, they did not look at
But
you
it's
like
what
that.
you heard.
It's what I heard. It's what I saw.
Yeah.
And so God has definitely given me different instances where I was able to, in a positive way, have somebody there that saw something positive happening when I saw something negative. And no, Angela, that's not the way that happened. It was this way. You
And
know,
love you enough to walk you through that.
walk me through it. Yeah.
Not say you're wrong, but hey, like there was a way to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And it was a way that you could receive it.
The first time I taught a class at the Home of Grace, I saw eyes rolling. I saw just these looks of boredom and, you know, who do you think you are up there trying to teach us? And the girl that I had invited to come in with me because I needed somebody to be there with me, she called me later that day and she was like, did you see those girls? They were leaning forward. They had their pencils in their hands. They were just eating up everything you said. And that's literally the opposite of what I saw. So that really got me like examining like what I see and what I hear, how I hear it. And that was a huge eye opener, you know, but God in his mercy and grace and sovereignty, you know, he had these things happen in a way that I could accept it, you know, when I could accept it and how I could accept it, you know, and nobody could tell me, hey, you're seeing this wrong. And I'm like, okay, I'll take you for your word for it. And let's, you know, undo this perception thing inside of me. It took the way that it unfolded.
Yeah.
It didn't change overnight, but it started that.
It started a willingness to speak up and say, okay, well, if that didn't happen, and I trust her, I brought her with me.
Yep.
And I know that she's telling me the truth.
Yes.
Just that little bit of awareness is the key to all my problems today.
Yeah.
You know, but that awareness that, okay, well, maybe I didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm going to look at other situations, but that takes bravery.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah, very easy.
Yeah.
We know
Especially
how.
when you've been doing it for 40 something years, you know.
It's not so easy to stop and say, all right.
Yeah.
Show me what to do.
Okay. Yeah. Somebody tell me. Now tell me.
Yeah.
What's really going on.
And there's really probably two things at work here, and you correct me if I'm wrong for you. But so some of it is perception, right? We will hear something benign and turn it into something awful, right, in our own heads. The other thing is learning how to let go of others' reactions, right? So in other words, what I mean is you may be speaking to a crowd of 100. 90 people may be leaning in going, what? But you'll see 10 people kind of nodding off, and you'll judge your performance on the 10 and make that about you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Gosh, I failed. This was awful. Look at the, and
I'll never do it again.
You missed the 90,
never
right?
Yeah.
And so, there's just such all of this. I'm really curious about your recovery story because you've obviously
Yes, absolutely.
moved.
Well, and and I would like to say about my addiction, towards the end of it, I'd say the last 10 years, I'm using needles at this point, and then I get a hold of meth.
When did that start?
At 30, maybe 30 years old. And for a few years I hid it. I was able to still hold down a job, work, do all the things. And then, just like with the progression of anything, it became,
You couldn't hide it.
Couldn't hide it, began to, quit working, was living, I feel like in the underground of the meth addiction, that world. And that drug definitely took me places in my mentally that I would not wish on my worst nightmare. I dated a guy who took me places I would not wish. I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare. Yeah. He was a nightmare. And I hope God's gotten a hold of him as well. But, we were sick. And I do believe that insanity, unlike death, scared me. death did not scare me. I would do copious amounts of drugs, and I did not care if I woke up, lived or died. But insanity is the one thing that I think that when I caught my reality, my true reality slipping, thinking I was a different person in different places.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. I mean, we could
So you were
talk
having
about
some
the good, bad, and
psychosis,
ugly.
like legitimate
Absolutely.
drug-induced psychosis.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
Because
I
I'm
mean-
assuming this is at this point, you're crossing lines you said you never would at some point in your life,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes. I'm just living in ways and doing things, I'm just out, and I'm catching charges for robbery, and I'm theft, and I'm stealing, and I'm running around with people and just doing anything I can to survive, get the next high, have zero direction or willingness to even live life really I didn't think I had it in me. I didn't think once you had changed or gotten that far down that you could change.
That there was hope for anything.
Yeah, no hope for a better life.
Or at any time, that fear of the fear of insanity, mental illness, had anything to do with all you knew is that as
My
a child,
father.
your dad
Yes.
went into mental illness and it changed everything.
So he's paranoid schizophrenic. And in my 20s, I read that that's when it would, if you were going, it was going to progress, that's when it would. So all of my 20s, I really,
You
so then I'm
spent thinking you were
I'm
going-
overanalyzing how I think, I think, and I think I thought that I really thought something that I was mentally challenged.
Sure.
I really did. I knew that I didn't think the way other people did. I knew that I didn't process life the way other people did. My emotions got the best of me. I knew that I just did not handle things the way I watched other people so
where it
easily
seemed like
doing.
they did. Yeah.
So I really thought that there was something mentally wrong. And then here comes this threat of insanity and we know the stories of like the meth psychosis.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's been on it knows that, it is real. It's reality to you because you really believe it's happening.
And you're really seeing it. And it's terrifying.
Absolutely. You're hearing, you're seeing, and then you've got all this lifetime of things that we've put into our bodies, in our minds, like horror movies and just things that we've seen, watched, read, and it's all coming and it's turned on you and tormenting you now. And, but the last time I got arrested, I think it's a funny story. It got me here, so I hate to ever leave it out, but, I had left the guy. I knew I almost killed him. And I remember saying, I will not end up on Snapped. I'm gone. I left with the clothes on my back, no shoes on my feet, nothing. I just started walking. And for like a month, I was just kind of jumping from here and there, staying with people. I hadn't really slept. So I'd been up for a month, not eating well. He's calling me on the phone saying, hey, look behind you. He's telling me the color shirt I'm wearing.
Oh, yikes.
Like he's really playing with my mind too. So I think I think it all just kind of fractured in that moment. And so I stole a lady's golf cart one night and I'm riding around on it in the neighborhood and I rode by her house the next day and waved at her. I don't remember doing this. This is what the cop tells me when they finally catch up to me. He's like, how we got you, right? And he tells me you rode by our house and waved at her. And I realized then that I had created in my mind, this was my golf cart. This was my neighborhood. These were my neighbors. I had created some kind of world in life. I can't tell you all the science behind it, but I just know that at that moment, I said,
That was your
"Take me to
reality.
jail. I'm done. Like, this is where I'm like all reality is fractured. I can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy at this point. So, so I went to jail, stayed for 3 months. I have been in jail. I have 9 felonies altogether, but I've had many misdemeanors. My mother always came and got me out of jail. That time I didn't call anyone. I went into disciplinary seg twice for fighting because I'm a fighter now. I'm a freeze, flee, or I'm gonna fight you. Like it's one of the three is gonna happen. Yeah, by the end of the day, you know. So I got in 2 fights. So I'm in disciplinary seg for 2 months straight. And in that time, I'm in a room, in a cell by myself for 2 months. And I remember just being like sick. I lost weight, like I was pale, you know, I something was wrong with me. I know now it was the lack of human contact. Like it literally was the lack of human contact. Like I loved that time of day where they came in and tossed your cell, you know, and patted you down. Cause I was like, hey, you know, I'm still alive. Like I'm still here. They see me, you know? But about halfway through there, a girl gets dropped into my tank with me, or my cell. And if she ever sees this podcast, she'll know exactly who she is. She began to talk about rehab. You know, people had talked about rehab my whole life, you know, my whole life in addiction. And it never really stuck. It was kind of one of those things that I never really thought was for me. I'd seen the movies, you know, that's not me. You know, I don't think I thought anything would work for me to make me better, get me better. And she begins to pray for me. And I felt the Holy Spirit just as strong. And I knew in that moment that I was feeling pure love. And I remember saying, like, this is better than any drug I've ever had. And now I've heard people say that so many times, but I'd never heard anyone say that. You know, and now I know that was God. He reached down in that cell that day. He sent that girl, that little angel in there to pray for me. And I knew at that time, I called my mom when I got out. I called her from a payphone and I said, hey, I just got out of jail. I've been in there for 3 months and I'm ready to go to rehab. And of course, I'm sure she's like, you know, she's going to jump. Yes. All right. My baby girl's ready to go to rehab. But she probably in the back of her mind was like, this is just like all the other times.
Yeah.
But I went.
How many times had you been?
To rehab? None.
Oh, none.
I'd never gone. I had always said I would go. Come get me out of jail. I swear I'll go to rehab.
I gotcha.
I swear I'll go. But this time I sat in there. I waited it out. And I wanted to go to rehab.
Nobody rescued you.
Nobody rescued
you out
me. I didn't have to bargain with rehab to get out.
Yeah.
So 8 days later, I was at the Home of Grace for Women in 8 Mile, Alabama. Yep.
Is your dad still alive at this point in your story?
No. Well, yes. At this point in my story, he's still alive. I went through the Home of Grace, and I thought I was going to leave. I was going to do my 90 days and go home. You know, the weekend before I graduated, my mom came to visitation, and her sister had died the year before that. And that week, my uncle had called her and said, hey, I want to give you Charlene's car. So my mom had a car to give me so I could go to the grad dorm because you had to have a car. So she comes to visitation and she tells me, you're not coming home. You're going to the grad dorm. I'm giving you this car. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, at this point, and now I look back and I see, wow, I was truly surrendered.
Yeah.
You know, because I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I try to talk girls into going to the grad dorm these days like pulling teeth. You know, I realized that that I was more surrendered than I even knew. I was walking in things, you know, people say God's a gentleman, and I truly believe that, but I believe the Holy Spirit will ravish you and wreck you. And it's nothing but the Holy Spirit that drew me into these different decisions that I made to get me here today, because it was not me. Like there's no way Angela chose any of this at all.
Well, or would have believed that she could have it.
That she could have it. So, you know, back to the question about my dad, he is still alive. I'm working in the kitchen at this point, living in the grad dorms. I'm in a discipleship.
Which is a year.
I'm doing all these things. I mean, I could tell you that God's fingerprint is on every single decision I made. I was at a house where they were talking about a discipleship. Before I got it out of even knew what a discipleship was, I was like, I want to start that. You know, I mean, I'm just happened to be there with, you know, just was with somebody, you know, right along. And so God's just, his fingerprints all over my story. And literally every turn, every intersection, every crossroads I came to, I can see now where he was there with someone, some sort of reason for me to go the path that he wanted me to go. So that's why I say, you know, he's a gentleman, but he also, like when he wants you, he's going to get you. So thank God. And thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
So I'm working in the kitchen, and Miss Littleton, she loved to take me and get me to tell my testimony. She put me on the news one day. We're talking about it's Christmas. Darwin comes out and he's interviewing me, and I'm sitting there in the kitchen telling him about the needs we have. And I think my cousin Michael Lignos, my dad's side of the family, he saw me and he called my Aunt Irene, who was married to my dad's brother. And he said, I think I just saw Angela on TV. So she calls up to the Home of Grace on a Saturday, and I'm working, and I answer the phone as the house mother. Hi, thank you for calling the Home of Grace. This is Angela. How may I help you? She's like, this is your Aunt Irene, And so she's, we talked for like 30 minutes. It's crazy because the girls that were knocking on the door, they're all sitting there like listening to me have this phone call with my aunt that I haven't talked to since I was like 8 years old, and I did not go to see my dad. He's in a home at this time. His health is bad. He was older. He was 20 years older than my mom. So he's older. And he died before I got to go see him. So, that's a huge part of my testimony as well. Because that was a hard time of life. And then I'm having to grieve a father who I didn't know, you know. So.
Did he die in his addiction? I know if he's in a home, he's not actively using, but did he go into that home actively using and then had to dry out? Do you know?
I don't know. If anything, he was probably smoking weed.
Okay.
I think he was like a lifetimer there with that, but I don't think that he was using psychedelics or the PCP, the level of drugs he was using for a while.
Yeah. So you said that's a big part of your testimony, though.
So this is about a year. He dies about a year after. So I do my year. Let me back up. I do my year in the grad dorms. I don't talk to men for a year. I took that rule very seriously. I didn't even talk to them as friends. I mean, I was like, who do I talk to? What do I say? Who do I not talk to? I was like a dog on a leash. Y'all tell me what to do because my decisions get me in the wrong spots.
I don't know how to be obedient. I need you to tell me what to do.
Yeah. Because I want I want this thing you have. I don't know how to get it. So, and Catherine and I have some of the same mentors. Actually, we have all the same mentors. The same women that poured into my life poured into Catherine. So, she probably knows that these women stepped up to that plate with vigor, and they were like, okay, we got this, but as a mentor now myself, I love somebody that wants accountability and they want input and they're willing to do the things that you tell them to do. No questions asked. I mean, I didn't ask when she said, don't answer that call. I was like, okay, I didn't make excuses or try to talk her into why I should answer this call from this toxic man I dated. So I left the Home of Grace. I do my year discipleship. I'm finished with all that. And I hear, don't date for a year. So I moved down to the Home of Grace, started dating a guy. We got married real quick. That was over in 3 weeks. I mean, we stepped out of God's timing. I knew that I did not hear from the Lord myself when marrying him. But everyone else around me was so excited, Everyone else was so sure that we were supposed to be together, And,
well, I think one of the things that good people, we can be in church, we can be serving the Lord. Doesn't mean that I'm seeking the Lord's will in this instant and that I'm following it.
Yeah. And no one was trying to do damage, you know.
I think it was a valuable lesson.
It was a valuable lesson.
But
I
you're
probably
married and
needed
divorced in 3 weeks?
We didn't divorce for 3 years, but the marriage was over in 3 weeks.
Was there a relapse accompanied with this or just?
No, it was not. It was without too much detail. It was very much a flashback to my childhood. And I said, nope, not today. I'm done. I was very mad at God for a while. The funny thing about it was we lived in a little house that we were renovating, and it had been a grocery store downstairs and an apartment upstairs, and we're living downstairs where the grocery store is. He's gone. He's been gone for about a month and a half. And I'm sitting in that room. I'm going to work. I'm showing up. I'm running the kitchen. I'm doing my house mother duties. I have a discipleship that's showing up to my house once a week, but that's about all I'm given. and I'm not giving well in that, and these people around me kept me when I couldn't keep myself, but I'm going home and I'm checking out. I'm depressed. It's not really good. And I looked around this room and I realized that it was made out of cinder blocks. So if anybody wants to tell me what this reminds you of, cinder blocks. The windows even in the place were they were about 8 foot up, long, skinny windows like this all around the room. It was a jail cell. And I looked around and I was so mad. I was like, God, I'm so mad right now. I'm back in the jail cell, and it was in that moment that I just broke because I was having these issues with, should I divorce him? Should I leave him? This covenant that we made in front of God and man, for marriage. And I know I heard God say, leave. And within 2 days, I had an apartment down the road, living above some girls. I had lived in the apartment downstairs with my friend, moved out, got married, and then maybe 4 or 5 months later, I was renting the apartment above the apartment I lived in downstairs. So, God's even he's like, okay, we're going to bring you back and retry, reset. So I'm in this apartment within 2 days. And it took me a long time to really, I kind of isolated. I was upset. I was not really mad at anybody. I wasn't mad at him. I wasn't mad at myself. I think I was really embarrassed too. A lot of embarrassment, that I did this. And, in the recovery world, nothing's behind closed doors anymore. It's right out in the open. Yeah. I'm not used to living life like that, remember, so.
But that too shows the strength of your recovery at that time, because many people in the early recovery still live in secrecy, which is a recipe for relapse, right? At least you were living in the discomfort of the openness. That's part of what kept you.
I was. Well, one of the things that kept me there was I had that group of 9 ladies showing up to my house every week to come get discipled.
That's neat.
Even though they were pulling me through a time that could have taken me out more than they'll ever probably know.
Yeah.
So life begins to look a little different in this time.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go on.
We need to, at some point, just let you speak, don't we?
Oh, no, I welcome the questions. Yeah.
But no, I just thought it was interesting that, and I think this is very common, which is why I just want to, we will charge recklessly into something, and then as it's ending going, well, God, what do you want me to do? And I jokingly think he's probably thinking, well, I wanted you to ask that question before you got here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I just had this conversation with someone dear and precious to me.
Yeah. Now that's not to be, that's not a finger wagging. That's the purpose of Romans 8:28. Honestly, is that God can work all things together for good for those who love him, because he knows we're going to be, including our mistakes. He can work together, but it's worth noting that we will charge recklessly into something and then get mad at him.
I'm waiting, but all I'm getting is silence, and I'm like, well, but did you seek his will before you did this,
or are you not hearing the no's because it's really something you want?
We didn't want to hear the no.
Didn't want to hear the no. Yeah,
that's great.
So this is just something I was thinking that I know that I haven't said, but the very same time that you moved back and you're getting settled into this apartment and you're getting cats. And
getting cats?
Yes. Yeah, that was my new obsession, cats.
Yes, but she that's her thing. And somebody has to have them. But no, I mean we post pictures. There was a lot of us in this extended family, but it's a fishbowl, right?
Yeah.
So from the outside looking in, and I'm hearing, thank God for the discipleship, because I'm supposed to be leading them, but they're carrying me on those days I can't.
Yep.
But from the outside looking in, the home that you were building for yourself, it looked peaceful. The photos that you made a place that was yours. And so while I'm hearing you now say, I was embarrassed, I was mad, I was this, the whole time, what the people that loved you were thinking was, oh, she's healing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's healing.
Well, now, and I'm glad you brought that up because it was peaceful, and I did.
Peaceful.
After that happened, I really went on a mission to really heal. So I got surrounded myself with people with prayer ministries, and I'm going to a wonderful church, the Cave Ministries. At the time that was called the Cave, it's called Revive now. I'm there, and they're loving on me. They gave me a pair of boxing gloves that everybody had signed, and they were like, "This is just to remind you that we're always in your corner."
I love that.
And I had those boxing gloves for like 3 years, and then I finally gave them back and was like, "I'm done with these now," But it did. It took me 3 years to file for that divorce. Yeah. It took me 3 years to face that. It took me a long time, but the whole time I was building a home that was safe, because I'd never had a home that was safe. And another thing I'd like to say was that I never lived in a home more than 2 years.
Before we go any further, let's take a minute to address the man or the woman listening to today's episode and wishing for a better life. Or maybe addiction has completely overtaken a family member or a friend.
You are not alone. As you may know, the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast is produced by the Home of Grace, a Christ-centered addiction recovery program in South Mississippi with over 60 years of experience.
The Home of Grace has residential programs ranging from 30 days to 12 months. With 2 separate campuses for men and women, they are fully staffed with caring individuals who want nothing more than to guide you to a life of recovery.
Services include individual and group counseling, marriage and family counseling, classes, workshops, GED, and workforce training, all grounded in biblical principles.
And because of donations from the community, the cost of the program is incredibly affordable.
Thousands of alumni from across the country can tell you there is no other program in the world quite like the Home of Grace.
If you want to start a new path to recovery, don't wait. Speak with an admission specialist today. Visit homeofgrace.org or call 833-55-GRACE to talk with someone.
That's 833-55-GRACE. Call the Home of Grace today.
Two years was the max, and that was not often that we were there for that long. I lived in that house for 6 years, that apartment for 6 years. And when I reached 2 years, that was like a huge milestone for me that I had been able to stay rooted and grounded. I've worked at the same job for 8 years, and that's huge.
Yeah.
That's only by God.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like, you're not going anywhere. And I just am so grateful that he was so faithful, even when I was not faithful to him. I wasn't faithful to stop and listen and hear, his guiding and his direction. And he had to pull me out of some things over and over again. But each time I never took it for granted what he was doing for me. And I was like, okay, let's make sure this doesn't happen again.
Let me learn from it.
And I had some amazing women, and I got to watch, even while my marriage was falling apart, I got to watch some friends of mine, find their true God prepared mate for them. And not in a way that I coveted that or was like, why did they have it and I don't? But I was able to feel very grateful, that it's out there and be able to see that it's out there, because I could have easily gotten jaded. I think I did for a little while. I was definitely at one time was like, God, if you want me to get married, you're going to have to like
burn them in a
something in this heart, because, I really was like, I'm cool here. I can support myself. I've got this great house. I love it. My room downstairs, they were all in recovery. Upstairs, we were all in recovery. I worked at the Home of Grace, had the extended family that we do. Christmases and holidays were never alone. So,
do you think that part of your ability to stay put so long had to do with who you were surrounded by? Because
absolutely.
Yeah, because I feel like that's the lifeline there, right? Because when you're raised, you talked about being raised in a home where you guys are moving constantly. The byproduct of that is that sometimes stability feels uncomfortable, right? But
yes.
So that could have, and you described that very well throughout your story, that you tended to run and kept moving. And that's a way to not have to look at anything. It's a continuance of the pattern. But I love that, right? One of the things I keep hearing is, and you said it, you know, that you were so surrendered, surrounded yourself with the right people. They served as God's ability to reach you and anchor you in what otherwise may have been a horribly uncomfortable stability.
Well, it was very uncomfortable for me, and I was not the most graceful, and I was not a receiver yet. So you got to understand that, you know, these people like Catherine in my life, and gosh, I could name so many, but pretty much all the women at the Home of Grace, you know, watched me go through some really ugly seasons, really try to push them away and give them every reason not to love me. And they
She's
just
fiery.
I am. And I will, you know, I will try to give every reason. I mean, I think that I've done that in my marriage recently, you know, to my husband, you know, because we're learning, he and I are both learning now how to be in a marriage where God's at the center, and we have a lot of trauma. And so there's still some things being worked out in me. But I've been through a process at this point. And I know that the process, though painful, is always going to be good when God's in it, you know, and he's doing the work. So
I think, so you started forming friendships there. And what I think you did was you gave Robin and Christy and Sandy and all of them, you gave them the ammunition they would need to hold your feet to the fire for those days you wanted to run, so to speak, because on days that you'd get vulnerable, that's when we open up and say, well, I struggled with always running.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? What we do in those moments is we are giving those people that the Lord has placed in our lives to love us through the hard times exactly what we need to hold our feet to the fire. Like, no, you're not going to run because that's what you always do. And now they're using what we were vulnerable with. And it's like, how dare you use that? But it's for your good.
It is. It is.
And you're going to get
remember
mad first, but you're going to get free later.
Yes. You know, and listen, y'all, Ted Lasso, on that show, I was watching it, and he says, the truth will set you free, but first it's going to piss you off. I was like, no truer words have ever been spoken because literally, and then I was like, well, I was so mad for so long in recovery, but I was like, oh, the whole time the Lord was like bringing me to freedom. You know, he was feeding me truth of his word, and he was letting me know who I was, you know, who I truly was meant to be. You know, even though I didn't want to believe it a lot of times. And the truth will make you mad. So, that's and healing is messy. It was, you know,
it's not clean, and it's not, there's not a how-to guide.
And it doesn't look the same for any one person. So,
well, and you know, one of the opposites to a life built on running, and Catherine just alluded to it, is vulnerability. And nothing's more scary than vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
So I get that. I wonder, can you guys, because you've skirted around this, but the audience may not know that your paths are intricately connected. And I'm wondering if, because you guys gave me a little snapshot of it, but your relationship with each other didn't start off rosy. And it sounds like it mimics your path to receiving other people, right? So can you guys talk a little bit about what that looked like and how
We were not friends.
Yeah, we weren't friends, and I don't think either one of us ever did anything to each other.
There was just something there.
There was something
and we
there.
knew that.
Well, you're both fiery.
Well, so, all right, I made it to the Home of Grace in September, September the 4th, 2018.
And I graduated August 20th.
The graduation before that, so she was exactly 3 months ahead. And there was my mentor was also her mentor.
I wonder.
And I would like to say for the record that I was definitely the toxic one in this. It probably had less to do with Catherine and more to do with me. So just to get that out there.
Well, that's a humble way to look at it. But I wonder if you guys didn't, because I was joking but serious. You know, she said you're fiery, and you're both a little fiery, which is there's good and bad to that.
Absolutely.
But I wonder if you guys saw
and
each
we're
other
friends
and each
with
other.
the same people too.
Yeah, so it's
But
also like
she
we
and
didn't
I
have a
just are
choice.
not- I wouldn't have told you that I'd hated her or anything.
But I knew I didn't like her because
Yeah.
I didn't feel I didn't feel safe, and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
And now that I'm verbalizing it, that's what it was, and I didn't feel emotionally safe, and I didn't know why, because whatever it was, there was something here.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you saw in each other the parts of yourselves that you didn't like.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We both like to cook. We both love the kitchen. Like, we were good at that. And we have all these areas that you could see we worked very well together. But it didn't mean we liked each other doing it. And we knew that.
Yeah.
But neither
we were
one
not
of us
ugly to each other.
That's what's weird.
No.
But
yeah.
all I know is there was a lot of prayer. We both had people that love us pouring into us. And it was like, leaving wasn't an option for either one of us.
Yeah, in the circle. Yeah.
And so
we just
leaving the
learned
home of grace
to-
at that time was not an option for either one of us. It was a death one way or the other. So we just kept going. And all I
kept
can,
going.
like, when I literally say, like, I prayed for her. I was happy when things would happen, when she was happy. I was like, I was genuinely happy. But there was still something there, and all I can honestly tell you is that the Lord allowed it to be moved one day. And there wasn't a conversation. I just knew it wasn't there.
Yeah, and it wasn't there for me
At
either.
all.
And it was
We're
like,
hey,
I really love this
I
girl.
really love you.
Yeah, it was
Like,
very.
we did have a weird conversation, but it was funny, but we were laughing and crying like, I don't know what that was, but I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And she's like,
yeah.
and I don't know what it was, and I'm sorry for my part. I don't know what our parts are, but I own my part because we know to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
And then
if
it
months
was just
go by.
beautiful
like,
after
when
that.
we get on the phone, we're going to be on the phone like I saw her yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
If she needs me, I'm going.
Yeah.
She was at my wedding.
Yeah.
You know?
I got to stay the night before the wedding.
Yeah.
I did.
In the inner circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that meant
and it
more
was
to
just
me than
wounded.
anything. I remember telling my husband when I was like, Angela, I'm going to stay the night before her wedding, so I'm going to stay at the lake. And he was like, what? And I was like, no, I've got to be there. I'm going.
This is like
This is a thing.
It is. It's
I'm
a big
going.
thing.
I brought
but you know, and
charcuterie.
I have other Catherines in my life, people that, and I, you know, one of them is just so nice. She's just such a nice girl. I didn't trust her. I'm like, nobody's that nice. But I've been around her for like 4 years now, and yeah, she's that nice.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm learning that, you know, people can be trusted.
Yeah.
You know, that I can trust their authenticity. You know, and maybe it was their authenticity that scared me. You know, even though I really respect authenticity in people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it may be just the same. It may be the same things in each other that we see.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, there's three women that I can say that we were in the same circles. We didn't bash each other, didn't talk about each other, weren't mean to each other, but there just was never connection. And then all of a sudden one day God was like, okay,
Yeah.
it's time. And and they're, you know, some of those people I know I'll have in my life for the rest of my life now. So
That's neat.
yeah.
I think if you get to this place, you're like, iron sharpens iron. I'm like, if I hear that
One more time.
you're like, she's just your sandpaper sister. And I'm like, ugh, I'm going to lose my mind. But I'm so thankful for that.
For those.
Because
yes.
a mentor leader in our life, Miss Valerie, what is she's like, what have you learned from this? What did you learn? I learned I didn't have to hurt someone with my words or allow them to hurt me just because we knew that we had that.
Yeah.
But we'd made a choice not to. I think we both knew that the other was wounded in different ways. And even if we didn't like each other, we didn't want to be a part of the ones to hurt.
No, absolutely
And I think that
not.
was part of it. But also I learned how to pray for someone that I was building resentment against, but I prayed for her to receive the things that I hoped for in my own life. Lord, if that's restoration and healing, that's what I want for her. If she never talks to me, that's what I want.
Yep.
I learned how to do war for someone.
Yeah. and just learned how to be like godly women to each other, and that not every disagreement deserves a.
I think some of this we kind of came to. We ended up tag teaming on a class, and with clients, I was teaching, she was talking, we were going back and forth, and neither one of us discussed it ahead of time. But it was like we came to this agreement at the same time, and I think she led off. She was like, "I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all think y'all don't get along? We didn't like each other at all."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Wait, what?" And we're like, "Okay, we're going to do
and
this."
they never could have. They never would have been able to know that we didn't carry our whatever disdain or whatever we had for each other on our sleeves when we were around each other, and especially around the clients. So that was a neat class.
It really was. So
That's neat. Does the restoration process in the relationship with Catherine, does that mimic some of the other relationships in your world as you went into recovery?
Absolutely. And I just have to realize now that when my defenses are coming up with somebody like that so much that those end up being the ones that I really like look up to and respect and really want to mimic in my own life. And I think that they have that same respect and value me in those ways as well. And it's just, I'm just glad that neither one of us or that the other women, anybody else that we've had problems with, that we didn't forfeit what God had for us because, the enemy was trying to cause division, and probably use the other person to, trigger things that were in us that would normally make us run or make me run.
Make us both. That's valid. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Angela, let me ask you about the recovery portion of the relationship with your dad. Sounds like you didn't have much of one, but I'm assuming there was some forgiveness hurdles that you had to cross. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, one, I forgave myself for a lot of the damaging beliefs that I had accumulated over my life in that.
Toward yourself?
Yeah, towards myself. And I just forgive him, I just forgive him now, I can't not forgive.
Why
but
not?
I also have
I know that sounds like a funny question, but somebody out there is going, what do you mean you just forgive? Why can't you just not forgive?
Not forgive, because that's what kept me so sick was all that, all the
hardness and unforgiveness
and bitterness. And it kept me unable to have healthy relationships in my life, for so long. But I just let myself, you know what? I'll tell you what I did. I let myself grieve what I never got. I let myself grieve that I did not have a father. But that does also kind of, one of the big things that happened at the Home of Grace that kind of helped my healing journey was I signed up to get baptized, and I didn't realize that this was the day that I signed up for, but it was Father's Day. That kind of, and when I didn't know, the whole morning I woke up, went to baptism, and the pastor said, "It's Father's Day." And I remember just thinking, it just hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
In that tub that I was about to be like baptized, and here I am turning my life over to my eternal Father, my real heavenly Father.
Who never left.
Who never left, and I know that now. He never forsook me. He never left me. He never abandoned me. It was me that turned. It was me that ran. But that helped me have a lot of forgiveness for my father as well, because
like
that was healing.
Still, I never saw my dad as a bad man.
Right.
You saw him as sick.
I saw him as sick, but I also saw him as a guy that really gave me a lot of attention because he was fun. He took me, he taught me how to drive. He was letting me drive and, taking me to the pool. He was doing all these fun things.
Yeah.
I was going over there when my brother was not. We had the same father. I was being, when I was a kid, I was the one that was going away and staying summers with my dad or with my grandmother. I don't know if I was being sent away or if this was something that was asked, but I do know there was a lot of time where the family was off doing their thing and Angela was with somebody else.
Yeah.
My dad or my grandmother, so, but I like I said, when I was 6 years old, I wanted to be an opera singer. And I remember it was, shut her up. She's too much. Make her stop. And these were things that, what 6-year-old wants to be an opera singer? I can't imagine a little 6-year-old running around the house trying to practice opera.
Yeah.
And how that was probably raking everybody's nerves. But I'm getting the message once again.
That you're not enough and you're bad and don't talk.
But I can go to my dad and my yaya's house and everything I do is amazing. So that was one thing that was taken from me, when that all ended. I was more mad that my dad ended,
being
messed
seen
that
and
up
acceptance
for me than anything.
Yeah.
Like now I don't have that.
Yeah.
I don't have these people that think I'm, just this wonderful child. I'm going back to this other place
where I'm not.
I'm not seen that way. So, yeah.
There's something heavy about that to me, and I don't know because knowing the history with you and your dad, there's also a manipulation aspect to his approval of all things Angela, right? Because so it's very sad, and I see that, which makes your ability to kind of move into a place of forgiveness all that more profound.
Yeah.
Right, the fact that you
now
were
I still feel for that girl. I feel for that girl. And plus God's restored that innocence.
Oh yeah.
He's restored that purity.
Yeah.
He's restored that thing that was taken so long ago, because it didn't end with my dad. I don't know. Being in the counseling world, I know now that a lot of us, children that were molested, we feel like we had a target on our back because. There's
Every
something
relationship,
spiritual that draws the predator to that person once that door is opened.
Yeah.
So that was definitely, and so that is something. But I would like to say here that my father was not the first. That it was a male babysitter when I was 6 years old that really began to blur the lines of what was right and what was wrong, Yeah. So,
both of them in a caretaker role and yet doing the most damage.
Yes. In a male caretaker role too, And then I've got a mom that doesn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And it didn't look real pretty the way she did handle it, to put it that way. But it's just, like I said, nobody was talking about this thing. She didn't have help.
Yeah.
I would say she also battled shame though.
Probably a lot, yeah. There's no
if a man that I bring into my child's life harms my child,
or I let my daughter go there,
I sent her
there,
and I don't know how to verbalize that this must be my fault. If your belief was always that you were bad, you're probably not the only one that had that thought.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of trauma, you know, but
but you had a willingness to do the work, and you.
Yes.
Well, and I want to say though, also a willingness and an awareness that I'm not healed and fixed. That this is glory to glory. It's a process that never ends. Like he is continuously going to bring those things up for us that we're like, oh man, we're back to okay. So I've got some more.
Absolutely.
Polishing. I don't want to get out of here or finish without knowing. You mentioned being married.
Yeah.
Y'all got married
November 1st of 2025 last year. So not quite a year yet.
Almost.
Yeah.
Now is he in recovery?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We met at church.
Nice.
And that was, speaking of, last year was a rough year. I got into a car wreck on June 1st, and then I fell and broke some ribs and fractured my spine on September 1st, and then I was married on November 1st. So, last year was very eventful. But I learned how to let somebody take care of me, physically. Now I'm learning how to let somebody take care of me emotionally and, in a lot of other ways. So there's a learning curve with my husband and I.
Sure.
He's so willing though. I've been in therapy and I've talked to therapists that tell me that, they have people that come in, these couples have been married 40 years and the guy's like, if you want to go to therapy, you go, but I'm not, and And Josh was so willing, you know, I may have to like, you know, like you got to do this, but he's willing. He hears from the Lord. You know, he's learning a level of patience with me that I need, you know, and I'm able now to teach him how to love me, you know.
You're able to receive it.
And receive it and say, hey, that's, you know, this is not okay. That's not okay. We're learning boundaries. You know, neither one of us came from families that had very stable relationships, modeling, you know, anything that we could ever look to, you know. So we're kind of winging it, but we have this community. We have these people that love us, you know. Amen. And we're both seeking God. Yeah. So we're going to just get closer, Amen. You know, and I know he hears from the Lord because I can be like, Daddy. Yeah. Yeah. And then God will speak to him on my behalf. And I get to get that faith builder as well, you know, and I truly do feel like God's daughter, like, and he's my daughter, and I'm his daughter, and he's letting me be married to this man, and he's working in both of our lives through it. So,
well, and you just alluded to something that many in the Christian community might know, but just to point out that, you know, if you want to get closer to your spouse, the way you do that is you both get closer to God, right?
And
so
then you just,
if you're moving towards the same point, you naturally get closer to each other. So I
saw that triangle one time, and I was like, I want that. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how to get it, but I want that. So
you saw
in discipleship,
that triangle in discipleship.
Yeah.
Angela, thanks. We talked briefly, for anybody listening, we talked briefly to start this, and we had mentioned I really wanted to get into your recovery story. So it may feel like we glazed over your addiction story, but I'm so glad we did, because you speak about your recovery in such real terms. You're so comfortable in it, right? You just get that, but not because it's perfect. And so I love that we talked about this, because you're so honest about that. Recovery is not the absence of struggles. Yeah. It's just a difference in how we approach them, right? Yeah. By the way, addiction for sure is not the absence of struggles. So neither one of them is the absence of struggles. It's just the difference in how we approach them. Yeah. It's the difference in how we approach life.
Yeah, we still have never found a struggle-free life.
Yeah.
It's still yet to have found that, but
right?
But
I don't think you'd want one.
There's purpose in it, for sure.
You couldn't find it, right? I mean, Jesus was very honest with us. In this life, you will have tribulation, right? He didn't say, hey, seek me and you'll have we live in a war zone.
Yes, we do.
We don't live where we're supposed to plant our flag of comfort. That day is to come. Yeah. So thank you so much I do kind of want to give you the ability. Is there anything we missed that you would want somebody to know before we end?
I mean, you know, to think back on some of the lies that I've believed about myself, you know, the fact that I am counseling women now, I'm in school to be a social worker. I just passed a test to become accredited alcohol and drug counselor. I've been rooted in the same place for 8 years. I mean, I've had good relationships. I've had bad ones. I've had people that have come for seasons and they're gone for others, you know, and I think the biggest thing was just learning to just get in the flow of it, like to allow the good to come, to allow the bad to come, to allow, and to be able to, you know, and not be that person in recovery that's like waiting on the ball to drop. Because I was that person at one time, like, ooh, everything's going too good, you know, and not being comfortable in those moments. And it was just learning to just take it as it was coming at me, you know, you know, and a lot of that, and God, like I said, his fingerprints on all of it. So I can go back, even on days I'm discouraged or I'm not feeling well, I can go back and I can just see, I mean, just a simple thing as waking up one day and finding love for somebody in my heart that like before it was like, hard. It was like, I don't know about this person, you know, like, and maybe a little malice, you know, maybe even a little bit of like, I want her away from me, you know, but just to just wake up one day and miraculously have this like unconditional love for this person or, you know, just the many, many things that God's brought me through. But it was always when I let go of my want, my will, my desire of what I thought life should look like, you know, and just knowing that like, one of my favorite scriptures is that God will do exceedingly and abundantly more than we could ever ask or even imagine. And I'm like, whoo, I got a vivid imagination. And the Lord has exceeded that imagination for the goodness that he's brought into my life. So, it's just surrender, it's just surrender, get in the flow, and learn to receive, I guess.
Yeah.
Receive. God has so much for us. We talk about all these gifts that he has for us, these spiritual gifts and all these things, but, and then not to know how to receive any of this,
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel very blessed, and with my life, I don't know. Like I said, I could have never imagined that I would have the life that I have right now. But I would not have it without Jesus.
Amen.
Like I wouldn't.
Yeah.
There would have been nothing for me to hold on to in those times.
That's what I was going to say. It wouldn't have been sustainable.
It would not have been.
It would have been conforming, and that's the difference.
Behavior modification.
Yeah,
those
and I
kinds
can
of
do
things.
that. We can definitely do that. But no, it's the transformation. There is no returning back.
Yeah.
That form is done.
Yeah. Old is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm super proud of you, and I'm so thankful that you came.
And Angela, I love what a great way to end this with that cap that you just did, because what you described is really a wonderful slogan in the 12-step community. It says that much of our recovery depends upon our ability to live life on life's terms.
Yes.
And you just said, I've become more comfortable when things are going well, and I've become more comfortable when things aren't going well.
Yeah.
Right. So that doesn't mean that we have to be right. It's what Paul talked about.
Yeah.
I learned to be content when I've got plenty, and I've been learned to be content when I have nothing. And what a balanced approach. I hope people see I feel like this was such a powerful discussion without it maybe being intentional in terms of where we went, because again, I just love where you're coming from. It's such a place of contentment.
Yes.
That's how I'm going to use it, right? Contentment can endure pain.
Yes.
And it knows how to ride the wave when we have one to ride, right? It can do both of those things. And that's what I see in you, right? It's when we shift from being pleasure seeking to being purpose seeking, we find joy.
There you go.
Right.
Hey, and I'm not good. I don't make it look good all the time and every day, at all.
That's how you make it look good.
But I also,
right there.
I don't hold that against myself anymore either.
Amen.
So
can I just say that again, that's where you do make it look so good. I'm so glad you're getting into this field, because the best counselors don't come from a place of I've got it all together.
Okay, good.
The best counselors come from a place of we're all in this process.
Yeah.
And we can still help each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately the help doesn't come through how far you are along the path.
Yeah.
It still comes from him. Yeah. Anything I can offer anybody isn't because I've done anything. It's just what I can. If I vacate myself enough to allow him to work through me, then I can be effective, whether I'm a hot mess outside of that conversation or not. Right?
Yeah.
Listen, the only people God can use are broken people.
Yeah.
We're just one of those coins that he can use if we let him, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
man, you know what? You capped it perfectly, and I'm just going to say that what I see in your story, what I see in your recovery so beautifully demonstrated is humility.
Yeah.
Oh,
and what a powerful, powerful place to be. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank y'all for having me. This was wonderful.
Oh, amen.
Yeah. Thank you for staying, for sticking by, getting me to come do this.
You were coming.
Yeah. And again, guys, I'm going to keep it that simple because I think Angela did such a great job of connecting the dots at the end. I will just highlight a couple of things she said, and that is surrender. And boy, if you don't see that in her story, one of the places where it really came evident, she said she got to this place where she was like, tell me what to do. To the degree in which she accepted and adhered to one of maybe the hardest pieces of advice in early recovery. She did not talk to men for a year. Most people reject that advice, right? Because it's too hard. What a demonstration of her surrender. And then I loved how she said, people kept me when I couldn't keep myself. Guys, your recovery and your Christian walk, more importantly,
Yeah.
is largely going to survive or struggle by the people you put in your world, by the people you put in your orbit. Ooh, thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you.
Guys, we love you. Much more importantly, Jesus loves you, and we'll see you next time on Jesus Loves Addicts.